so often we settle for that instant gratification, but it's so fleeting. Delayed gratification is the only way to really get that fulfillment in our lives. I mean, think about any great thing that you've gotten in your life, no matter what it is, whether it's a relationship, a friendship, a career, every one of those things usually took a long time to build. Anything worth having is going to be hard to get. Anything worth valuing is going to be difficult. The whole thing that gives something value is that it's rare. Those things take so much effort and patience and time to build those up. The reminder of this entire podcast is don't give up what you want most for what you want today. Be willing to grind for 10 years before you have an expectation that you deserve anything. If you haven't put 10 years into your profession, you haven't really grinded and put 10 real years, really put that effort in, then why do you deserve to be the best at your thing? Why do you deserve to be wealthy? You don't. Learn to be a little bit more patient. It's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to come to you. Sometimes you got to wait. Sometimes you got to earn it. Sometimes you got to learn the lesson before you can get to the next level. Hello and welcome to another episode of Real Men, Real Conversations. And today I have a special podcast. I want to talk about patience, and mostly to do with the workplace and building a career and things like that. But I had a friend came to me a couple of years ago, and he's kind of noticed me and a few of our other friends. We've been friends for 15, 20 years. And this guy's an entrepreneur, and he's done very well. He's actually built 3 or 4 companies that he's sold. But he's kind of that entrepreneur that really loves to build, but not necessarily, he likes the startup phase, right? He likes to go from 0 to 1, not from 1 to 10. And so he'll build the company and sell it pretty quick and move on to the next thing. And after doing this a couple times, he had a couple good payouts, $500,000 here, maybe $1 million there. But he came to us and he said, the one thing that I wish I did differently is I've noticed that all my friends that are truly very financially wealthy, they picked one thing and just went all in on it for 10 to 15 years, and they became the best at that thing, whether it's financial plan or, for me, it was real estate or whatever it might be. And he said, that's the path. He's like, the mistake that people make is thinking they're going to find that thing and get that one big hit. He goes, it's just not true. He goes, you pick something, you just stick with it for 10, 15 years. But the problem is that first phase, that 0 to 1 feels so much fun, right? So much excitement. Everything's new. You're breaking stuff. You're fixing stuff. Everything is really happening. And then all of a sudden you get into the mundane stuff, right? And then you got to hire some other people, and then you got to start taking on more expenses, and you got to start building and growing and all that. And that's not as fun for a lot of people. But in these stages is where you get the real benefits of doing the work. And it just takes a lot of patience. And so, the biggest mistake that I think millennials and the younger generation makes right now is they have this fake idea that things are supposed to be quick and easy. I mean, if you want food, any food you want, think about this for a second, what people used to have to go through for food. Nowadays, you literally get on an app and some college kid will drop it off in your door in 20 minutes, right? He can bring me stuff from the gas station if I want to. It's never been so easy to get meals. I read the other day, the average American has 3 fast food meals per week. And you start thinking about that. You can get that meal in 3 minutes, 4 minutes. I can't believe how fast McDonald's is when you go and get an Egg McMuffin. And so it's been harder and harder to get patience, right? Back when I was little, you were bored a lot. I remember going to the doctor's office with my mom, just sitting there. I was just so bored. And there was like a magazine that was like about houses or some shit. And you just had to sit there and be bored. And you just had to kind of be patient with it. Before we had cell phones, right? Your parents would come pick you up from football practice or something. And a lot of times they were late, hit traffic or got stuck at something. You just sat there for a half hour, 45 minutes. Sometimes you had to walk home. And you learned to be a little bit more patient. And the problem we have today with society is everybody wants everything right now. And it actually is a form of greed in a way too, and it gets you in trouble with investing especially. I'll tell you guys with my own investing game, I started making different investments when I was 21 years old. I bought life insurance. I paid into this policy $1,500 per month. It was a whole life policy. And so after about 7 years, it started to pay me more than I was paying in. And I've been doing this now for almost 20 years paying into it. And there's several $100,000 in that account now, right? Now, the flip side of that is I got greedy many times and tried to buy into companies. I tried to buy into businesses, things I didn't understand. And every single time I did that, I usually lost my money. I've done the math. If I would have just put $10,000 a month into the stocks that I was already picking for my 401k, I'd have about $8 or $9 million more than I have today. And I could have done that pretty easily. Instead, I was investing 50,000 here, 100,000 here, and losing money on stuff I didn't understand, getting taken advantage of. I just didn't have the patience. I mean, you hear these things when you're younger. You're like, look, if you just stick to this and you do it every month, cost average, and just keep going, eventually you end up with a lot of money. But it's not sexy. It's not as fun. It's not as cool of a story to tell at a bar. So a lot of people don't want to do it. And when it comes to things in our life too, anytime you try to speed something up, you're going to lose the fulfillment in it. And one of my favorite quotes of all time is, don't give up what you want most for what you want right now. It's a beautiful quote, because every time we get in trouble in life, it's usually because we're focused on what's happening right now and getting fulfilled in that moment, as opposed to what we want with true fulfillment down the line. I mean, think about it. Every single, if it's dieting is the easiest one, right? Like everybody wants a great body. But in that moment, when you're at the gas station, you see the candy bar or the donut or whatever it might be, like, can you give up what you want in the moment for what you want most, which is a healthy body, right? Sometimes you want to stay up late and do something, but you got to get up early and go to work, but you end up, actually sleeping in because you stayed up too late. Well, you gave up what you want most, which is to have the successful career. Or maybe you're not willing to do the hard stuff at work because in the moment it creates some pain. Going to the gym creates some pain. But if you do this enough over time, anybody that's really gotten into great shape knows the secret to this. The problem is that first 30 to 45 days. Because if you start grinding, you start eating healthy, you start sacrificing, eventually after about 30 or 40 days, you start to see the results. People start telling you, man, you look great. You look amazing. You start to see some abs coming through, right? And so you get motivated because you're like, it feels good to like be noticed and to have people seeing you look better. But what usually happens is you do it for a week or two and nothing changes, nobody says anything, and then all of a sudden you fall back into old habits. You haven't changed your identity around how you want to look. And so if you can have the patience, if you can just stick with it long enough, once you get that 30, 45 days under your belt, you're kind of in that momentum, you get into a flow, and you can usually get into great shape. I mean, think about any great thing that you've gotten in your life, no matter what it is, whether it's a relationship, a friendship, a career. Maybe you ended up, getting into a place where you just had some beautiful experiences. Every one of those things usually took a long time to build. Anything worth having is going to be hard to get. Anything worth valuing is going to be difficult. The whole thing that gives something value is that it's rare, right? Like it's rare to have a great friendship. It's rare to have a great relationship. Like those things take so much effort and patience and time to build those up. And the problem is like we settle for that instant gratification, but it's so fleeting. Delayed gratification is the only way to really get that fulfillment in our lives. Think about goal setting, right? How many people set a goal at the beginning of the year and they're super pumped. They have their New Year's resolutions. They have their goals. I think it's like 75% of goals are dead by February. Most people can't even make it more than a month. So why is that? Well, it's because they don't have the patience. It takes a lot of willpower to work through having enough patience to end up seeing the result. A lot of times, real estate was such a perfect career for this because you can work your ass off today, but you're not getting paid for like 3 months. I had to find the clients. I had to sell their home or sell them a home. It took 30 days to close. I mean, it's a 2 to 3 month process at best. Sometimes if they're buying a new home, it's a 1 to 2 year process. Eventually you get paid. The biggest mistake that realtors would make, I saw this all the time. I had a couple agents that were really, on my team that would always fall into this trap, is they'd have a big sale or they'd get a big commission and you wouldn't see them for 20 days. You wouldn't see them for 3 weeks. And all of a sudden, all their momentum's gone. And so I always treated it, I said, I don't ever focus on the result. All I want to focus on is what I'm doing every single day. If I focus on what I do every day, it doesn't matter if the deal closes. It doesn't matter if it doesn't. It doesn't matter how much money comes in. I'm focused on doing the thing every day because I was willing to be patient enough to allow that. And because of that, where most agents are selling 10 homes a year, I was selling a couple hundred because I wasn't worried about the commission coming. I didn't let that set me back. I was patient enough to know. I sold these condos in Park City. It's been almost 3 years now since they all went under contract. It'll be 3 years in November. And I have, yet to be paid on them. I'm sitting on almost $700,000 worth of commissions that will come in when these things close. I sold 31 of them. And I worked as hard to sell those as anything else I've ever sold, knowing damn well I wasn't going to get paid for a couple of years. But because I did that a few years ago, here in a couple of months when they start closing next spring, I'm going to get paid a shit ton of money. And so patience is the key. I mean, anytime you go, like, you can go hunting, right? And most people, what do? They kill the first thing they see. Well, you just gave up a chance to shoot a big buck because you shot a small one. You go fishing and you're just pulling whatever out of the ocean, right? You might have a limited license on how much you can pull fish. And if you just take the smallest one, well, that's what you get stuck with. It's the same thing in life. We settle for things that can happen quickly too often and don't take the time to build something massive. So why is it that people start something and then they stop? They don't have the patience to get through it, right? Well, there's a couple things. Number one is you have to have that long-term perspective. You have to have the long-term perspective. You have to show up today for a future version of you that you're going to get. I used to have a quote on my wall when I was selling real estate. It said, show up today for your future self. You never know who's going to need you. And that quote meant everything to me because in the moment, I'll be honest, it wasn't very motivating to go sell real estate. I was dead broke. I had bills. I had debt. I had overhead that was drowning me. And so it was really hard to get in the office and work hard to just pay off my bills or pay off more debt. So what I did is I had that quote, show up today for your future self. You never know who's going to need you, because it motivated me. I could build this story in my mind of all the things I could do one day if I worked hard now. And so I would, picture like these moments I would have. And I've had so many of these experiences, being able to go undercover with OUR and be able to go to World Series games, being able to travel all over the world, being able to help these men with We Are the They and see their lives change. Like all these things came about because that previous version of me didn't quit when there was no immediate reward. If I was focused on what I was getting in the moment, there's no way I could have worked that hard. It was not fun, but I was always focusing on the future. So number one is you got to have the long-term perspective. Number two is you got to have accountability, right? Like it's not easy to be patient. It's not easy to wait. It's not easy to take the slow route sometimes. And that's why you have to have an accountability partner. It's why you have a trainer in the gym, because when you don't think that you're progressing, he can help you see that you are. When you're getting tired and don't want to continue, he makes sure that you do, right? The next thing you have is you got to have a community, because you got to have support, because it's going to be difficult. Because in those moments of the grind, that 10 years or whatever it is, when you're building this thing up, when you're first starting your transformation with your body or your life or whatever it might be, there's going to be a lot of difficulties. If you don't have a support group, if you don't have friends, you don't have people that you can lean on and you can talk to and that you can, help just support you and encourage you, then it gets very difficult to do it on your own. Very few people ever achieve great things on their own. It's just so difficult to do it. You need support, you need friends, you need cheerleaders, you need those people that are going to have your back. And then the last thing is you want to have a mentor, right? It's one thing to be patient, but you can climb the wrong ladder for 20 years and you're not going to get to where you're trying to go. You got to make sure you're in the right place. You got to make sure that you have the path. So you want to find somebody. It's pretty simple. This is what I always do, is I just say, okay, who is where I want to be? And I'm going to go find out what they did to get there. So when I got into real estate, there was a couple of agents that were just crushing it, selling 50, 60, 100 homes a year. And I literally just figured out what they were doing. There's one in particular, his name is Chris Heller. He was a realtor in San Diego. He was the number one agent in San Diego. I literally copied his entire system. We went to this thing called the Top Producer Events, and we would share information with each other. And I literally just copied every single thing he was doing. I brought it back to Utah. He didn't give a care. I was in Utah. And I just plugged his whole system. And then I did it, and I worked it. I'll be damned. I became the number one agent in Utah. It was like the same system. All I did is found the guy that was already doing it, right? When I started doing all these other things that, like whether it was stand-up comedy or even real estate investing or all these things, I just found somebody that was where I wanted to be, and I copied what they did to get there. So, when I started taking this route of like, I want to be a public speaker, I want to, write books, I want to, do these podcasts, I said, who's the best in my opinion? I said, well, right now it's Ed Milet. That's the guy who I want to emulate. And so I figured out how to get around Ed. I hired him as a mentor, right? And I'm not saying you have to actually hire these people, but you can read their books, you can watch their videos, whatever you have the capacity for. But I just figured out what he did. And then I started talking to him. I started learning, and I'll be damned if, next thing I knew, I wasn't moving the needle that way, sharing stages with him. He wrote the foreword for my book, doing these different things. But I just found a mentor. I found somebody that could show me the path of how to get there. Because what I didn't want to do is, run in the wrong direction for a couple of years. And then you got to run back the other direction just to get back where you were. Another thing that's really important is you can't dabble in stuff that you really want to get great at. This is so important. You've got to go all in. It's massive action towards the thing. Anytime you're dabbling in something, nothing's going to happen because you're just not putting enough time and attention into it to truly learn it and make a difference. So in Malcolm Gladwell's book, he talks about, the 10,000 hours to become an expert. And what it is, it's 10,000 iterations, right? And what you have to do is just means like you have to put that effort in. It's like the world knows, like if you don't go long enough, if you don't do something long enough, you're just not going to be good at it. That's why you can't be good at everything, right? Like you watch the Olympics and, like there will be sports that the United States, for example, is crushing it at. And then there's ones they have zero winners in. And the reason why is because there's just so many things that everybody can do. And like people specialize, like the Chinese, they own diving, right? The US owns basketball, like, some of these different things, but you have to put full effort into that thing, take massive action towards it. And that's how you truly move the needle. I talked about nowadays, just everything's so much faster and everybody wants everything so much quicker. And it's where people get in trouble. It's where I used to get in trouble when I was younger with investing. I made so many mistakes by trying to cheat the system, right? I tried to, do these high interest loans, invested in it, and ended up losing my money. It turns out it was a Ponzi scheme, right? I lost quite a bit of money in that. I tried to expedite, and buy into businesses before I was ready to do it or understood what it was. I once bought a dental clinic in Arizona that didn't even exist, lost $50,000 on that. Like I invested this money, but it was always my own greed. It was trying to get there quicker than I could. I had this stupid goal that I want to be retired by 30. Like, what am I even talking about? Like, what is retired? I was always going to be working on something, but I was obsessed with this idea. And so I was making these giant moves to try to be retired by 30. If I just put that money in the stock market, like put it into, I literally was buying Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Zillow, and like Taco Bell stock, right? And so the company that holds Taco Bell. If I would have just put that money, all the money I put in those things into those stocks, they'd be worth $20, $30 million today, without a doubt. Like I put so much money into these projects that just, all I had to do was play the slow game. But I was greedy and I didn't know. I didn't have a podcast like this to listen to really tell me to slow it down. You see this even nowadays with like pro sports teams, right? I saw the other day there was a coach for one of the teams who lasted 1 year. The dude lasted 1 year and they fired him, right? They paid him a ton of money too. As I think it was the Sixers coach or maybe the Warriors or something, or the Wizards. Anyway, paid him all this money, fired him after 1 year. I started thinking about this. I don't know if you guys know this or not. Who's the greatest college basketball coach of all time? Everybody knows, right? John Wooden, without a doubt. This guy won 10 championships. He won every championship from 1967 to 1973. They went years without losing a game. Like, it's insane, the amount of NCAA championships he won. Well, here's the funny part. He didn't win his first one until 1967. He started coaching at UCLA 16 years earlier. He did not win a championship for 16 years. Nowadays, he would have been fired halfway into his tenure. He would have never had a chance. He wouldn't have had the patience of the people to be able to even get to become John Wooden. I think about that for a second. This guy won 10 NCAA championships. Like, literally, they couldn't beat him for a decade. But it took him 16 years to get there. He had the patience to do it. He tells stories when his players would come in the first day of practice. All he would do was teach them how to put their socks and shoes on. He would take the full time and do that. And the players were always like, what the hell? But he explained to him, he said, so many players end up having blisters and problems because they can't put their socks and shoes on the correct way. So he took half a practice just to teach him that. It's amazing the little details. You see Nick Saban, right? He's just a machine at getting the right thing over and over and over again. It kind of feels boring. Like my mentor, Mike Ferry, used to say, he said, fall in love with the monotonous routine of the work. And what he meant by that is like the boring stuff is where you make the money. Sometimes you just got to grind. You just got to keep going. You got to be patient. So anytime you're trying to expedite, anytime you're trying to shortcut or get there quicker, especially the younger people, man, I just want everything so fast, right? And I don't blame you. Your world's fast. You get, like back in the day, if I wanted to figure out some information, I had to go read it in a book, right? Or at least then I had to Google it. I mean, I remember if you wanted to drive somewhere, you had to print off the map off the internet. That was like revolutionary. I remember going on a road trip with my buddies when we graduated high school, and my buddy Dave had like 20 maps printed off so that we knew where to go to get to Six Flags or Newport Beach or the Angel Stadium or wherever we were going that day. We just had these stupid print off maps. Like, you just had to kind of be patient with it. Nowadays, everything's at the tip of your hands. Everything's right there, right? I had a tire blowout. I was on a date I don't know, but maybe about a year ago. And my tire blows out in my car, in my Tesla. And so I pull over. I immediately tell my date, hey, I'm going to get you an Uber to take you home. 4 minutes later, the Uber took her home. 6 minutes later, my Uber arrived. Tesla picked up the car, had it towed. By the time I woke up the next morning, the Tesla was back in my driveway. Like, it is insane how quickly we can get things done in today's society. And it makes us lose this patience, but all of the big gains are in that patience. And so just the reminder of this entire podcast is don't give up what you want most for what you want today. Be willing to grind for 10 years before you have an expectation that you deserve anything. If you haven't put 10 years into your profession, you haven't really grinded and put 10 real years, really put that effort in, then why do you deserve to be the best at your thing? Why do you deserve to be wealthy? You don't. If you're going to be investing, you can try to do crypto and, meme coins and NFTs and all that stuff. Yeah, the people that truly understand it are making a shit ton of money, but 90% of the people are losing their money. All the money in crypto, if you think about this, it has to come from somebody else to go to somebody else. And so every single person that's making all this money, there's so many more people losing their money. And so when we don't understand things, we don't have the patience to learn them. Like, one of my favorite things when I teach younger people, they'll be under 25 years old, they'll come to me and they'll say, I have $100,000. What do I invest in? I said, you invest in you. Because until you're making $200,000 or $250,000 a year, you don't make enough money to buy anything that's going to make a difference in your life. But if you can double your income, or you can triple your income by getting more skills and more talent, by doing coaching and joining, seminars or masterminds or college or whatever it might be, then you're going to make a lot more money, and you're going to end up gaining a higher return on investment than anything you would have bought as a real estate investment or anything else. And so that's my encouragement to you guys, is learn to be a little bit more patient. It's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to come to you. Sometimes you got to wait. Sometimes you got to earn it. Sometimes you got to learn the lesson before you can get to the next level. When I've made the biggest strides in my life is when I fully immerse myself in something and don't expect it to change quickly. Last May, I really wanted to change how I was going about relationships. And so I hired a couple coaches. I went to a seminar. I went to a 60-hour seminar in Maui with Tony Robbins. The whole thing was about relationships, but you have to fully immerse yourself in something. It's like when I went on my Mormon mission, right? I tried to learn Spanish in high school. I don't even know what my book said. It said, ven conmigo. I never even knew what that meant. 2 years of Spanish. It means come with me. I went to the MTC. I thought I spoke Spanish. I got to Mexico. My first day there, guess what? Learned very quickly. I did not speak Spanish. I could not understand one person what they were saying. But after about 6 weeks of being there and fully immersed, I had a companion that did not speak English. Like, I was in it. I was full on speaking Spanish. I was dreaming in Spanish within 2 months because I was fully immersed in it. If you want to grow in an area, you got to fully immerse. If you want to truly move the needle, commit, go all in on something, and just be patient. Let the results come. Anyways, thank you guys for listening. This was another episode of Real Men, Real Conversations. By the way, if you guys like this episode, if you like the Real Men, Real Conversations episodes, then join me over on my Instagram broadcast channel. I cover topics like this every single day. We talk about these kind of issues. It's the same name, Real Men, Real Conversations. And let me know what topics you'd like me to discuss. We talk about everything from how to be a great father to how to be, sales and networking and everything in between. But overall, just how to be a better man. So thank you again for listening, and we'll catch you next time.